The first sign of a crack in your universe isn't a thunderclap, it's a faint, almost inaudible hum of something being wrong. For me, that hum started in the kitchen, right next to the smart speaker my kids got us for Christmas. I thought it was just a piece of tech, a novelty for playing old rock ballads and checking the weather. I never imagined it would become a black box, recording the last moments of my marriage as it crashed and burned. It captured a conversation not meant for my ears, a whispered betrayal that turned my world inside out. My first instinct was pure, unadulterated rage, but as the shock subsided, a colder, more calculated thought took its place. This wasn't just the end, it was the beginning of a lesson she would never forget. You think you know how this ends, think again. Before diving in, hit that subscribe button and comment below. Have you ever dealt with betrayal? Let's hear your stories. Part 1, The Hum of a Happy Home. Life for a 48-year-old IT project manager named Frank Morrison had a certain rhythm, a predictable, comforting cadence. It was the 6:00 a.m. alarm, the smell of coffee brewing, the familiar weight of my wife Sarah's head on the pillow next to me. It was the 45-minute commute to a job that was more about managing personalities than projects, a job that paid the mortgage on our comfortable suburban house in Charlotte. It was the evening ritual of asking about each other's day, a script we'd been reciting for the better part of 25 years. We were a success story, or so I believed. Two kids, both successfully launched into college, a home filled with a quarter-century of memories, and a partnership that felt as solid as the oak tree in our front yard. I wasn't a man given to grand romantic gestures. My love language was practicality. I was the guy who made sure the oil in her car was changed, who fixed the leaky faucet without being asked, who maxed out our 401(k)s to ensure our future was secure. I provided, I protected, I thought that was enough. Sarah was my opposite. She was the color, the chaos, the one who would suddenly decide we needed to repaint the living room a vibrant teal or book a spontaneous weekend trip to the mountains. She'd been a graphic designer before the kids, and that artistic spark never quite left her. It flickered in the way she arranged flowers on the dining table, in the colorful scarves she wore, in the passion she poured into her now part-time pottery classes. I admired it, even if I didn't always understand it. I was the foundation, she was the beautiful, unpredictable house built upon it. The first hint of a tremor in that foundation was so subtle I almost missed it. It was a shift in her energy. For years, our evenings had been an open book. Now her phone, once casually left on the kitchen counter, was always screened down or in her purse. When it buzzed, she'd glance at it with a practiced nonchalance that was anything but, "Just Chloe," she'd say, naming her best friend. More drama with her ex. I had no reason to doubt her. It was the little things. The new perfume, a musky, exotic scent so different from the light floral she'd worn for years. The sudden, intense interest in the gym, going for evening spin classes that left her energized and glowing in a way her pottery never had. "You're really dedicated to this new fitness kick," I'd commented one evening, watching her pack her gym bag. There was a new pair of leggings, a vibrant splash of neon pink, still with the tags on. She smiled, a quick, tight curve of her lips that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Got to keep things interesting. Don't want to feel like an old married lady." I'd laughed, pulling her into a hug. "You could never be that," I breathed in the new perfume. It felt like I was holding a stranger, a beautiful, exciting stranger, but a stranger nonetheless. I chalked it up to an empty nest midlife crisis. The kids were gone. She was redefining herself. I should be supportive, I told myself. It was a phase, a healthy one, probably. My own needs had been on the back burner for years, a sacrifice I'd made willingly. Long hours at work to pay for tuition, weekends spent on home repairs instead of hobbies. I'd let my own friendships wither, my gym membership lapse. My world had shrunk to the size of our home, our family. And now, with the kids gone, the silence in the house was deafening, filled only by the low hum of the refrigerator and the growing distance between us. I'd reach for her in bed, and she'd give me a perfunctory kiss before rolling over, murmuring she was exhausted from her workout. The passion that had once been a steady flame had dwindled to a pilot light, and I was terrified a strong gust of wind would extinguish it completely. The irony, the dark little joke the universe was playing on me, was that I was the one who installed the damn smart speaker. It'll be fun, Sarah, ID said, plugging in the sleek gray cylinder we called a Nexus. We can listen to music while we cook, ask it for recipes. She de-rolled her eyes, calling it another one of my tech toys, but she'd come to enjoy it, asking it to play her 80s pop playlists while she worked in the kitchen. It became part of the furniture, a silent, unassuming witness to our slowly unraveling life. Part 2, a different kind of static, suspicion is a poison. It seeps into the bloodstream slowly, a single drop at a time, until your entire system is corrupted. You start seeing shadows in every corner, hearing whispers in every silence. My wife was becoming a stranger in her own home, and I was becoming a detective. It was a role I never wanted, a pathetic, cliché character in a drama I hadn't auditioned for. Her phone was Fort Knox. She de-angled the screen away from me, her fingers flying across the keyboard with a speed I'd never seen before. One evening, I walked into the living room and she slammed her laptop shut with a guilty start. Wow, top secret work, I joked, trying to keep my tone light, but the question was a lead weight in my gut. Just ordering you a birthday present, she'd lied a little too quickly. You're not supposed to see. My birthday was 4 months away. The excuses became more frequent, more elaborate. The pottery class ran late. Chloe needed her for an emergency girls' night, a weekend yoga retreat in Asheville. She'd return from these excursions flushed and distant, offering vague summaries that felt rehearsed. She'd talk about the poses she learned or the terrible vegan food, but her eyes were elsewhere, replaying a different movie in her head. A movie I wasn't in. I tried to bridge the gap. I booked a table at our favorite Italian restaurant, the one where I'd proposed. She spent most of the dinner checking her phone under the table. Everything okay? I asked, the pasta turning to ash in my mouth. Yeah, of course, she said, her thumb swiping furiously. Just checking on my sister. I knew she was lying. The texture of her lies had changed. They used to be soft, white lies, like telling me a hideous tie I'd bought looked great. These were different. They were hard, brittle, and they created a wall between us, brick by painful brick. One night, the cognitive dissonance became too much to bear. Sarah was supposedly at a late movie with Chloe. I was watching some mind-numbing action movie, trying to ignore the gnawing anxiety in my stomach. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was a notification from our credit card app, a charge for $150 at a place called the Crimson Lounge. I'd never heard of it. I Googled it. It was a sleek, intimate cocktail bar downtown, known for its dim lighting and romantic ambience. Not a place you go to see a movie. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was one thing to suspect, to feel the vague unease. It was another thing to hold a piece of cold, hard data in your hand. For a moment I considered my options. I could call her. I could drive down there. My mind flashed with images of me bursting in, a wild-eyed, wronged husband making a scene. But what would that accomplish? I had a location, but no face, no name. Instead, I did nothing. I sat on the couch in the dark, the flickering TV screen illuminating the hollow man I was becoming. When she came home around midnight, she was humming. How was the movie? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. She jumped, not having seen me in the dark. Oh, Frank, you scared me. It was great, so funny, you would have hated it. She leaned in to kiss me, and the smell hit me. It wasn't her new musky perfume. It was gin and a faint, cloying trace of a man's cologne. I didn't say anything, I just nodded. The poison was doing its work. The loving, trusting husband was dying, and in his place, a cold, watchful stranger was being born. I was no longer a participant in my marriage. I was an observer, gathering data, waiting for the inevitable system crash. The silence in the house wasn't empty anymore. It was filled with static, the crackle of 1,000 unspoken truths. Part 3, the nexus in the kitchen. The discovery wasn't dramatic. There was no screeching of tires, no kicking down a motel room door. It was quiet, sterile, and utterly devastating, delivered by the dispassionate voice of technology in the heart of my own home. It happened on a Tuesday morning. Sarah was at her pottery class. The house was still and silent, a museum of my failing marriage. I was feeling a rare pang of nostalgia, a desire to reconnect with the man I used to be, the man Sarah had fallen in love with. I wanted to listen to the album we'd played on our first road trip together, a slightly obscure 90s alt-rock band. I went into the kitchen and said, "Hey Nexus, play Counting Blue Cars by Dishwalla." The speaker lit up. I'm sorry I can't find that in your library. Can you spell the name? I tried again. Same result. Frustrated, I pulled out my phone, opened the Nexus app, and navigated to the settings to see if my music service had been disconnected. That's when I saw it, a tab labeled Voice History. I knew it recorded commands to improve its AI, but I'd never had a reason to look. Curiosity, that masochistic impulse, got the better of me. I tapped it. The screen filled with a list of my recent, mundane requests, weather forecasts, timers for cooking, music requests. I scrolled down past days, then weeks of our ordinary life transcribed in cold, blue text. And then I saw an entry that made my blood run cold. It was from a week prior, on the night of her supposed yoga retreat. The timestamp was 11:17 p.m. The transcribed text was just one word, Alex. It wasn't a command, it was a name. A name I didn't know. Next to the transcription was a small play icon. My thumb hovered over it, trembling. Every instinct screamed at me to close the app, to throw the phone against the wall and pretend I'd never seen it. Knowing was a precipice, and I understood that pressing that button was stepping off the edge. There would be no climbing back up. I pressed play. The recording was only about 45 seconds long. The audio quality was crystal clear. The Nexus, sitting on our kitchen island, had picked up everything. It started with the clink of ice in a glass, then Sarah's voice, low and husky in a way I hadn't heard in years. "Oh, Alex," she'd sighed. That must have been the wake word. The speaker, mistaking Alex for its own name, had started recording. A man's voice, smooth and confident, murmured something I couldn't quite catch. Then Sarah spoke again, her voice thick with a desire that was a physical blow to my gut. "I can't stop thinking about last time," she whispered. "Here, on this counter. Frank was asleep upstairs the whole time. It was so risky, so hot." The man chuckled. It was a low, intimate sound. "That's what you like, isn't it? The risk, knowing he's right there. He's so predictable," she said, and the casual cruelty of it stole the air from my lungs. "He has no idea. He thinks I'm at some stupid yoga retreat, finding my zen. My zen is right here." There was a sound of a kiss, wet and prolonged. "We have to be more careful, though. He's been watching me. I can feel it." "Don't worry about Frank," the man's voice said, dripping with condescension. "I'll take care of you. Now let's go upstairs. Show me your zen in our bed." The recording ended with the sound of their retreating footsteps and Sarah's soft, complicit laughter. I stood in my silent kitchen, phone in my hand, the world tilting on its axis. The conversation replayed in my head, each word a fresh stab, on this counter. I looked at the granite island where my kids had done their homework, where Sarah and I had shared thousands of meals. It was now a crime scene. He's so predictable, was my loyalty, my stability, my tireless effort to build a safe world for her, just boring. Don't worry about Frank, the dismissiveness of it. I wasn't even an obstacle, I was an afterthought. The heartbreak was a physical force, a crushing weight on my chest, but underneath it something else was stirring. A cold, hard ember of rage, the kind of rage that burns clean and bright, clarifying everything. They thought I was predictable, they thought I was clueless. They had used my trust and my home as their playground. I saved the audio file. I backed it up to the cloud, to a thumb drive, to a secure folder on my work server. I wasn't just a heartbroken husband anymore. I was an IT project manager, and I was about to make this betrayal the most meticulously documented project of my life. Predictable Frank was about to become their worst nightmare. Part 4: Echoes and Aftershocks. The hours and days following the discovery were a masterclass in dissociation. I moved through my life like a ghost, my body performing the mundane rituals of work and home, while my mind was a screaming vortex of the 45-second recording. Every time I looked at Sarah, I didn't see my wife of 25 years. I saw a stranger who had laughed about betraying me on my own kitchen counter. I'd watch her type on her phone, a small, secret smile on her face, and I could hear his voice. "That's what you like, isn't it? The risk." She'd come home from the gym, her skin glowing with sweat and satisfaction, and I'd hear her wisp, My zen is right here." She made me coffee one morning, leaning against the granite countertop, and all I could picture was her and this Alex intertwined on that very spot. The echoes of their betrayal were everywhere, turning our home from a sanctuary into a torture chamber. My internal turmoil was a brutal civil war. One part of me, the wounded, loving husband, wanted to scream, to smash plates, to confront her and demand answers. I imagined the scene 100 times, me playing the recording, watching the color drain from her face, the satisfying collapse of her lies. But what then? Tears, excuses, a messy, pathetic end that would give her the satisfaction of a dramatic scene. Then another, colder part of me took control. This was the project manager, the man who dealt in logic, evidence, and execution. This part of me knew that a premature confrontation was an emotional indulgence I couldn't afford. An emotional outburst gives the other party control. A calculated, evidence-based reveal, that was power. Vengeance, I realized, wasn't a dish best served cold. It was a project best managed with meticulous planning and a flawless execution strategy. I found myself reflecting on our past, searching for the cracks I'd missed. I remembered moments of passion, flashes of the fierce connection we once had. That weekend in a rustic cabin for our 15th anniversary, making love by the fireplace. The way she'd looked at me with pure adoration when our first child was born. Were those moments lies too, or were they just relics of a different time, a different marriage? These erotic, tender flashbacks were a special kind of hell, sharpening the pain of the present. Was the woman in those memories the same person who called me predictable while in another man's arms? One evening, my curiosity became unbearable. I needed a face for my pain, a name to attach to the smooth, condescending voice from the recording. While Sarah was in the shower, her phone lay on the nightstand. My heart pounded. I had never, in 25 years, violated her privacy. But she had violated the sanctity of our marriage. The old rules no longer applied. Her passcode was our anniversary date. The irony was a bitter pill. I opened her texts. It didn't take long. A thread with a contact named simply A. It was filled with emojis, plans, and thinly veiled sexting. I scrolled up, my hands shaking, until I found what I was looking for, a picture. He was exactly the cliché I'd expected. Younger, maybe late 30s, tanned, with perfect teeth and the sculpted, superficial physique of a personal trainer. He was smiling into the camera, arm draped around Sarah, my Sarah. She was looking at him with an expression of unguarded joy I hadn't seen directed at me in years. The picture was taken at the Crimson Lounge. Seeing his face didn't bring clarity. It brought a fresh wave of nausea and rage. This was the man who had defiled my home. This was the man who had called me an afterthought. This was Alex. I took a photo of the picture with my own phone. Evidence. Exhibit A. Sarah came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel. "What are you doing in the dark?" she asked, oblivious. I locked my phone and looked up, my face an impassive mask. "Just thinking," I said, my voice steady. "About us, about the future." She smiled, a genuine, warm smile for the first time in what felt like months. "Good thoughts, I hope." "The best," I lied. The civil war inside me was over. The project manager had won. The project was now officially in the planning phase. Part 5, The Architect of Silence. The days of grief and rage solidified into a period of cold, quiet purpose. Predictable Frank was dead and buried. In his place was the architect, a man who moved with a silent, deliberate strategy. I was building a case against my wife, and my primary tool was the very technology I had so proudly integrated into our lives. My smart home was about to become my war room. My first move was to leverage my IT skills. I told Sarah I needed to optimize our home network for better security. She just nodded, uninterested, which was exactly the reaction I'd hoped for. That weekend, while she was at a pottery workshop, I went to work. I installed Keylogger software on her laptop under the guise of an antivirus update. I activated location tracking on her phone through our shared family plan, a feature we'd originally set up to keep track of the kids. I even bought 2 tiny audio-activated recorders, the kind journalists use, and discreetly placed one under the passenger seat of her car and another in the vase of fake flowers in our bedroom. It felt sleazy. It felt like a violation. But my marriage vows had been violated first. This wasn't about snooping, it was about discovery in a legal sense. I was gathering evidence for the inevitable divorce settlement. At least, that's what I told myself. The truth was, a part of me was morbidly fascinated, driven by a need to understand the full scope of the deception. The dark thrill of uncovering the truth was a strange, addictive counterpoint to the soul-crushing pain. The information began to flow in, a steady stream of digital poison. I read their emails, their gushing, juvenile declarations of love. I tracked her movements not to the gym, but to a cheap motel off the highway or to a sleek downtown condo I soon identified as his. I listened to the recordings from her car, hearing them laugh and plan their next tryst, sometimes dissecting my latest, clueless comment with cruel amusement. He asked me if I was happy today, I heard her say in one recording, followed by a peal of laughter. I almost told him I am now. Alex had found that hilarious. I became an actor in my own home. I was attentive, loving, the perfect husband. I'd ask about her day, listening intently as she spun her elaborate lies, all while I had a transcript of her real activities running through my head. The irony was my constant, dark companion. "How was the pottery workshop, honey?" I asked, kissing her cheek as she walked in the door. "Oh, so great. We worked on glazing techniques. It was really technical," she'd reply, her eyes bright with the thrill of her real afternoon. "That's wonderful," I'd say, my voice a perfect imitation of a supportive husband. "Liar," my mind screamed. "I know you were at the Holiday Inn off I-77. I have the GPS logs and a 10-minute recording of you complaining about the lumpy pillows." This double life was exhausting, but it was also empowering. For years, I had been passive, a man to whom things happened. Now I was in control. I was the one with the information, the one pulling the strings from behind the curtain. They thought they were the clever ones, living a secret life right under my nose. They had no idea that I was the silent audience to their every move, the architect of a silence that would soon come crashing down around them. I compiled everything into a secure, password-protected file on a clean laptop I'd bought with cash. Transcripts of the recordings, GPS logs, copies of hotel receipts I'd found through our credit card statements. Screenshots of their explicit texts, the photo of them together at the Crimson Lounge. It was a monument to my wife's betrayal, meticulously organized and utterly damning. As I worked, a strange thought occurred to me. In her own twisted way, was Sarah seeking the same thing I was now experiencing? The thrill of a secret, the power of holding knowledge someone else does. Perhaps her affair wasn't just about sex or feeling desired. Maybe it was about feeling clever, about having a domain of her own that was completely separate from the predictable life she had with me. It was a fleeting moment of empathy, a glimpse into her possible motivation that made the whole situation more tragic, but no less unforgivable. It didn't change my plan, it only sharpened my resolve. Part 6, An Unlikely Alliance. Every good project manager knows that you can't execute a complex plan alone. You need stakeholders, allies who can provide support and resources. My project was no different. I had the data, the evidence, but I was operating in an emotional vacuum. The loneliness of my secret was crushing me. I needed to talk to someone, but it couldn't be just anyone. It had to be someone I could trust implicitly, someone who would be on my side without question. The answer was Sarah's younger sister, Jenna. Jenna and I had always had a good relationship. She was down-to-earth, pragmatic, and had a no-nonsense attitude that I appreciated. Unlike Sarah, who often lived in a world of feelings and aesthetics, Jenna was grounded in reality. She was also fiercely loyal to the people she loved, and I knew, despite her love for her sister, she had a strong moral compass. For the past year, she had been making subtle comments, dropping hints that she was worried about Sarah. "Sarah seems flighty lately, don't you think, Frank?" she'd ask me a few months back over coffee. "All this gym stuff, the new friends, it's not like her." At the time, I defended my wife, making excuses. Now Jenna's words echoed in my mind. She had seen the smoke long before I was willing to admit there was a fire. I invited her to lunch at a quiet diner, far from our usual neighborhood spots. She could tell immediately that something was wrong. "Okay, Frank, what is it?" she asked, putting down her menu. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Worse," I said, my voice cracking slightly. I took a deep breath. "Jenna, I need to tell you something about Sarah, and I need you to just listen before you say anything." For the next hour, I laid it all out. I didn't spare her the details. I told her about the phone, the lies, the credit card charges. And then I took out my phone, plugged in my earbuds, and handed one to her. "This is from our Nexus speaker," I said quietly. "It recorded this by accident." I pressed play. I watched her face as she listened to the 45-second recording. I saw her expression shift from confusion to disbelief, then to a look of profound sadness, which was quickly replaced by a flash of hard anger. She handed the earbud back to me, her eyes glistening. She was silent for a full minute, her jaw tight. "That son of a bitch," she finally whispered, but I knew she wasn't just talking about Alex. She was talking about her sister's betrayal of everything our family stood for. "Who is he?" she asked, her voice cold. I showed her the picture from Sarah's phone. She gasped. "Alex Keller, he's a trainer at her gym. Oh my God." "I've met him." Sarah introduced him as her new workout buddy at that charity gala last month. "He was so slick, so smarmy. I knew I didn't like him." Her validation was a balm on my raw nerves. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't just a jealous husband. The signs had been there and she had seen them too. "What are you going to do?" she asked, her eyes fixed on mine. "I have a plan," I said, "and I need your help." My plan had been forming for weeks, a hazy blueprint that now, with an ally, began to sharpen into focus. Our 25th wedding anniversary was just 3 weeks away. Sarah, in a fit of what I now recognized as performative guilt, had insisted on throwing a big party at our house. She de-invited all our friends, our family, everyone who had witnessed our life together. It was meant to be a celebration of our enduring love. I saw it for what it was, the perfect stage. "The party," I said to Jenna. "I'm going to use the party." Jenna's eyes widened, and then a slow, grim smile spread across her face. "Frank Morrison, you magnificent bastard," she said, her voice a mix of shock and admiration. "What do you need me to do?" My request was simple. Sarah had put Jenna in charge of creating a celebratory slideshow, a collection of photos from our 25 years together that would play on a loop on the large TV over the fireplace. "I need you to give me the final presentation file the night before the party," I said. "I have some special additions I'd like to make." Jenna didn't hesitate. "Consider it done." Leaving the diner that day, I felt 100 pounds lighter. The secret was no longer just mine to carry. I had an ally, a co-conspirator. The architect now had a partner. And together we were going to build the perfect stage for the final act. Part 7, the anniversary slideshow. The day of our 25th anniversary party arrived, cloaked in a perfect, sunny Carolina sky. Our home, the stage for my wife's duplicity, was now decorated for its final performance. White balloons bobbed in the corners, and the scent of catered food filled the air. Friends and family milled about the living room and backyard, glasses of champagne in hand, offering congratulations and admiring remarks about our storybook marriage. The irony was a physical taste in my mouth, as metallic and bitter as be. Lewd, Sarah was radiant. She wore a silver dress that shimmered when she moved, flitting from guest to guest like the perfect hostess, the perfect wife. She'd occasionally catch my eye from across the room and blow me a kiss. It was a flawless performance. I in turn played the part of the proud, doting husband, my smile feeling like a Halloween mask stapled to my face. Inside, I was a coiled spring of ice and fire. Jenna had delivered the slideshow file to me the night before, as promised. I'd stayed up until 3 a.m. in my office, the only light coming from the glow of the laptop screen. I didn't delete her work, I built upon it. My additions were seamless, a Trojan horse hidden within a tribute of happy memories. Around 8 p.m., Sarah clinked a glass for attention. The room quieted down. "Hi, everyone," she began, beaming as she looped her arm through mine. Her touch felt like a brand. "Thank you all so much for coming to celebrate 25 years with me and my wonderful, amazing, predictable, reliable husband, Frank." She laughed, and the crowd chuckled along with her. My blood ran cold at her near slip. They say the secret to a long marriage is communication and trust, and I couldn't be luckier to have a man who has given me that every single day. She looked at me, her eyes shining with what looked like genuine emotion. Was she that good of an actor, or was she so deep in her delusion that she actually believed her own lies? "My sister Jenna helped put together a little trip down memory lane for us," she continued, gesturing to the large TV over the fireplace. "See, so please enjoy a look back at the Morrison journey." She squeezed my arm and hit play on the remote. The show began. The first 2 minutes were exactly what everyone expected. Photos of our wedding, goofy pictures from our honeymoon, the birth of our children, family vacations, Christmases, and birthdays. Soft, sentimental music played in the background. People were smiling, murmuring awe at the images of our young family. Sarah rested her head on my shoulder, and I had to fight the urge to flinch. Then the music subtly changed. It faded out, replaced by a low, ambient hum. The photo on the screen was a lovely one of us, taken just a year ago. It stayed on the screen for a few seconds longer than normal. Then white text began to appear at the bottom, like subtitles. Transcript, unidentified male. That's what you like, isn't it? The risk, knowing he's right there. A confused murmur went through the room. Sarah stiffened beside me, her head snapping up. Her smile faltered. The image changed to a solo picture of Sarah, smiling beautifully at a pottery fair. More text appeared. Transcript, Sarah Morrison. He's so predictable. He has no idea. He thinks I'm at some stupid yoga retreat, finding my zen. My zen is right here. The room was now completely silent, save for the hum from the TV speakers. Every eye was glued to the screen. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, her face a mask of dawning horror. She looked at me, her eyes wide with panic and confusion. I met her gaze with a calm, dead-eyed stare. The next slide was a GPS map of our town, with a red line tracking a route from our house to the Holiday Inn off I-77. The date and time were clearly stamped in the corner. The slide after that was a screenshot of a text message. I can't wait to see you tonight. Same place. Sarah, counting the minutes. Frank thinks I'm having a girls' night. He's so clueless, a collective gasp went through the crowd. I could feel the heat of dozens of stares on us. Sarah was trembling, her face ashen. And then came the finale, the piece de resistance. The screen went black for a second before a single, high-resolution photo filled the screen. It was the one from the Crimson Lounge. Sarah, looking ecstatic and alive in the arms of the handsome, smiling man, Alex Keller, who I had been delighted to discover from Jenna, was also at the party, standing near the back bar, his smug smile now frozen in a rictus of shock. Under the photo, the caption was simple and devastating, "Happy Anniversary." For a long, drawn-out moment, nobody moved. The only sound was the faint hum from the television. Then, Sarah made a choked, strangled sound and pushed away from me as if I were on fire. The dam of silence broke. People started whispering, turning to look at Alex, then back at Sarah. It was a chain reaction of horrified realization. I finally turned to look at my wife. Her face was a ruin of makeup and tears. The beautiful, confident woman from an hour ago was gone. In her place was a shattered, exposed stranger. "Frank," she whispered, her voice a ragged plea. "How could you?" I leaned in close, my voice low so only she could hear. "How could I? You whispered about your affair on the kitchen counter while I was asleep upstairs. The nexus in the kitchen recorded everything. You called me predictable." I gave her a cold, empty smile. "Was this predictable enough for you?" Her eyes widened in horrified comprehension. She remembered, she finally, truly understood. She had been caught by a goddamn kitchen appliance. The humiliation was absolute. She turned and fled, pushing through the stunned crowd and out the front door into the night. The party was officially over. Part 8, The Sound of Freedom. The aftermath of the party was a chaotic blur of shocked faces and hasty exits. No one knew what to say. They just grabbed their coats, offered me awkward, pitying glances, and scurried out into the night, eager to escape the blast radius of my imploded marriage. Jenna was the last to leave. She came over, squeezed my shoulder hard, and said, "I'm proud of you, call me tomorrow." Then she too was gone. I was left standing alone in the center of my living room, surrounded by the debris of a life that no longer existed. Half-eaten plates of food, abandoned glasses of champagne, and a silence so profound it felt louder than the preceding drama. The slideshow had stopped, leaving the picture of Sarah and Alex burning on the screen, an epitaph for my marriage. I picked up the remote and turned it off. I expected to feel a surge of triumph, a cathartic release of vengeful satisfaction, but what I felt was quiet, a deep, unnerving calm. The rage that had been my constant companion for weeks had burned itself out, leaving behind not emptiness but clarity. It was the quiet after a violent storm. Sarah didn't come home that night. The next morning, I was woken by a text from her lawyer. I spent the next few months dismantling our life together with the same methodical precision I had used to plan my revenge. The divorce was surprisingly swift. My evidence was so overwhelming, so irrefutable, that her lawyer advised her not to contest anything. I got the house. I got the majority of our assets. She had forfeited any claim to a life built on my predictable loyalty. I heard through Jenna that she and Alex had tried to make a go of it, but their relationship, born of deception and illicit thrills, couldn't survive the harsh light of reality. It crumbled within 6 months. There were moments in the quiet solitude of the now empty house where I'd think about her. I'd wonder if I could have done things differently. What if I had confronted her in private? What if we'd gone to therapy? I'd play out that alternate reality in my head. The screaming matches, the tearful confessions, the agonizing process of trying to rebuild a trust that had been fundament. Allies shattered, I'd imagine years of looking at her and wondering if she was lying, of feeling that phantom pain in my gut every time she was late coming home. And every time I came to the same conclusion, it would have been a different kind of death. A slow poisoning instead of a clean break. My way was brutal, but it was final. It was surgery, not a chronic illness. I sold the house. It held too many ghosts, too many echoes. I moved into a smaller apartment downtown, a place that was mine and mine alone. I started filling the silence not with distractions, but with things I'd forgotten I loved. I bought a new guitar and started playing again. I reconnected with old friends from college. I started hiking on the weekends, finding a new kind of zen in the quiet solitude of the Blue Ridge Mountains. I was rebuilding not just my life, but myself. The predictable Frank she had mocked was a man who had put his own needs and desires on a shelf to make room for his family's. The man who emerged from the wreckage was different. He was stronger, more self-aware, and unwilling to ever be an afterthought in his own life again. One Saturday, I was sitting in a coffee shop, reading a book, when a woman at the next table asked me about it. We started talking. She was smart, funny, and her laughter didn't sound like a prelude to a lie. We talked for an hour, and when I left, I had her number in my phone. I didn't know if it would lead to anything, and for the first time in a long time, I was okay with that uncertainty. My liberation wasn't about revenge or winning. It was about closing a chapter of my life on my own terms. The smart speaker in the kitchen hadn't just recorded an ending, it had recorded the beginning of my freedom. And the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was the sound of a new page waiting to be written. If this story hit home, like and subscribe for more gripping tales of love and betrayal. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Would you forgive or seek revenge? Check out the next video popping up now for another twist-filled saga.